Alright, I got the first two gauges, hence the old In this video, I'm going to show you how I constructed this air filter system as well as the air intake horns below on my 3D printer. These are all the parts that I printed for my intake system for my Cobra. It includes the horns for the downdraft system as well as the filtration system for it to keep the particles and any dirt and dust out as much as possible out of the engine. So we're going to go through what it took to make these, the design, the printed part, each printed parts, the assembly of the system, and also we're going to go do some testing, hopefully, in this video after we got it all assembled and done. So I'm going to start with the air horns here. These are printed on the 3D printer. I took the measurements of the existing air horns, which were a little bit taller. I modified them, put a lip on there for the filter to sit on top of. These took about, I think, about 14 hours to print each. They weigh, I think, about 68 grams in total, each one. So not a lot of weight. I had to print 8 of these. I'm only showing 4 here because each side is going to have 4 since it's a V8. Another piece is, this is the lower piece. Snaps on to the horns like that. So once I glue up each of these pieces right here, it'll be an entire piece that would connect all 4 together. Then for the top section, I printed out these pieces, which basically are a mirror of the bottom, and each one of these will need to be glued together as well. Once I've got it all glued up, I'm going to glue these snap rings on the bottom so that they snap onto the horns, so I don't have to have any other bolts or screws on those as well. And then on the top, I've made these pieces that will hold filters, small filters on the top across the very top of the filtration system to allow more air in. And I've got a piece for each one. Here, I'll show you. Right here. Right there. Then I also have some metal mesh that I've welded all of these edges to make it nice and smooth so it doesn't get hung up on anything. And what that'll do is it'll wrap around the filter piece, or the pieces, top and bottom pieces, and then I'll take this filter and cut it to strips and then glue it up so that it fits perfectly on slips over the screen or mesh that I just built. And also one thing that just may be nice is to make it look clean, as I've got this vinyl here that looks like carbon fiber, and I'll lay that up on top of the filter to make it just more of a clean look, and then also it'll cover up the lines caused by when I glue these together. So when I glue them together, there'll be a slight line there. I'll sand it all smooth, I'll do some finish work, and then apply the vinyl, and I'll show you how I did that. The first thing I'm going to do on this base is I'm going to mark the pieces to make sure that I'm putting the right ends together, because they have to go in a very specific order the way I've designed it. So I'm doing that right now. I got this aluminum plate, which I'm going to put these on as I glue them together, because the ABS glue will pop right off of the aluminum, and it makes it also, if it leaks below, it makes a nice smooth finish. And what I do is I make sure that I take the ABS glue and I just brush it lightly on both pieces before I stick them together. Make sure I've got enough. I'm pretty generous because I don't want these things to break later on. And the ABS glue I found works really well with this product, just like any other ABS-based plastic. It glues together really well, and it's more of a chemical bond, I believe, than your like epoxies and stuff that just have a bonding agent. I don't know that much about it, but this seems to work best for what I've tried anyway. So I just put it on like this, and then press the pieces together, making sure that all the seams and everything are lining up perfectly. You could clamp this as well. I usually have a little clamp over here that I take, and just to make sure that they're securely affixed to each other. So I'm going to do the rest of the pieces, and I'll show you what it's like when I'm done. I've got the bottom section now just sitting off to the side. It's not completely dry, so I'm going to let it dry until tomorrow. But it is set up enough that it's not moving anymore. But it is still a little flexible on those joints. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the top right now, and it's basically exactly the same process. I'm going to take the brush. I got it in a big bag. These are pretty cheap, and I'm going to just go ahead and use the PVC or ABS cement and do the exact same process. So the pieces are now dry. I actually let them set a couple of days to make sure that the bond was really strong and fully cured. Now I'm going to do some cleanup on these. Not too much on this bottom piece that's going to go onto the top of the intakes, but more on this top piece. So I'm going to sand this to make sure it's perfectly smooth. And then I'm going to take some vinyl I had just laying around. This is some 3M wrap that looks like carbon fiber. And I'm going to basically put it on here so it looks more finished than just the raw plastic with these seams in it. I just want to show you, we did a test with this piece. We glued it together and then broke it apart just to see how much force it would take to break it apart. And basically, I put my full weight on this thing. I put it on the table here and then just pushed as hard as I could. And it broke. The glue actually didn't release. It was actually the layered adhesion that broke them apart. So I think this is going to stick together really well. But we'll see. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and get this cleaned up, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I've got this sanded now. So now I'm going to put down this vinyl. It's actually fairly simple. You just have to make sure that you keep it as smooth as possible on this. So pretty simple. So now that I've got it down on this, the vinyl, I'm gonna cut it to shape with the X-Acto knife here, just kind of following the indentations that I've made in the vinyl. You want to be real careful because this is plastic, so just take your Here is the piece done with the carbon fiber vinyl. As you can see, it looks pretty much like this was made out of carbon fiber. Probably weighs about the same amount as a carbon fiber piece of this size would weigh. I'm sure it's only maybe 70 grams in total weight. But here it is. I think it looks pretty good. So the next piece we're going to do is put these grates in here, and that's going to hold the top air filters in place and keep them from sucking into the horns on the engine. So I'll go ahead and glue these in and show you what that looks like once they're in. I'm going to cut. Here's the filter material I'm going to use on the filter, on the filtration system. So I'm going to cut this to fit in each one of these individually. So I'm going to measure these, make the cuts, as well as I'm going to cut it to match the surround part. Excuse me. That's going to go around the outside perimeter of the filter. So let's cut those, or get them measured out, and we'll get those cut. And I'm just going to cut it with an old pair of scissors I have laying out here in the garage. Okay, here's the pieces cut in each of those shapes. Now I'm ready to glue those in. One thing to note, I'd rather cut these a little too big than too small. And that's one of the big things. So you can always trim a little bit away at a time to get it to fit. But again, I'd rather make these these filter pieces a little too big than too small. Okay, now I'm going to glue these in. And what I'm doing is I put the filters in, and I'm going to just brush a little bit of glue around each one, just making sure that it's got enough to hold it in place. And the reason I'm leaving the filters in is because I don't want these things to compress them too much, because that'll restrict some of the airflow. So really, I'm just going to use this little brush and then just dab a little bit of glue. All right, the last piece that we need to glue, and we're going to glue these while the filter pieces are drying, are these little snap rings. This is what will hold these bottom plates onto the intake horns. So basically, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just take a brush, dab on or paint on the ABS glue onto these rings, like so. And then center these. I'm only putting 2 on because it doesn't really need to have all 4. And also it's a lot easier to get on and off with just 2. I've tried this before with 4 of them, and it becomes really hard to get off. The one I'm going to measure just to make sure it's basically the same all the way around. Nice and centered. This may take a second just to get it my first measurement. All right, here we go. Looks like we got a pretty good job right there. Okay. So we'll let those dry and come back and work on the rest of the system. All right, so one of the last parts we need to finish is the screen, and it's going to go around the outside perimeter and hold this ring air filter on this. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to seam it so the seams comes over on the inside. So I just need to start making this bend to match the radius ends of this filter. This will take a little bit of manipulation just to get it just right. But once it's done, it looks really good. It's a nice touch. to the filter. I'm kind of getting there, but it's going to take a little bit. You can see this overlaps, and where it overlaps, then I'll weld it with the TIG welder of the stainless steel screen. Okay, I've got the air filter and the screen made. So now I just need to mark where I need to cut the air filter. I'll cut that and glue that up. Again, it's the same way with this glue. I just want to make sure I put a pretty generous amount on both ends of it. Let it sit just for a minute. And then stick it together. So that's together. We'll just let that sit and then let it dry, and then we'll spread it around this and go from there. So the filter is now glued up, and we can see how well it fits onto the screen. It should be fairly tight. Pull it up next to it. So that's the screen. And now, just to fit it onto the bottom base, it's going to be tight because we don't want it to be loose at all, right? And there's the way that fits. Once the lid is on, it'll pull it even tighter. I'm also going to put a touch of glue, just a couple of different places, so that this filter is always attached to this screen. But before I do that and do the final assembly on this filter section, I need to tap these holes because this is what's gonna, these threaded rods are gonna screw in there, and then that's what's gonna hold the top lid here to the base. So I just basically already got the tap here, and since this is plastic, it works pretty easily, so I can just do it by hand to make it happen. As you can see, it's pretty easy. You need to back it up to clean out the threads. Otherwise, they get kind of gummed up, and if they get too gummed up, they'll damage what you're trying to, the thread itself, and then it doesn't work, right? So you can see how much easier it goes in. It'll come out the back side, but I'm going to run that thread all the way through right there. So we've got all the parts glued up, put together. I've put these already in, tightened them up so they can't move. We've got the screen and the air filter put together. We've got the top put together as well with the screen. Now we're just ready to assemble the whole thing. So you need to snap these into place. So you can see how that sits perfectly in the base. You do the same with the top, getting it snapped together. If you need to, on this, I can reach in this inside here and push that out a little bit to get that in, because it's tight. There we go. Then I made these little nuts that center the cap and hold it to the base. Okay. So there we have it. There's the top air filter. These are the horns that we fabricated. We'll just basically set this on top just to show how it all works. Let's see. These will need to snap in there. Snap another one into the other piece, and the other just float in the system. So this looks like so. One thing I forgot to do on this, I've got my air temperature gauge or sensor that I can screw in there. There we go. That's in. There we go. So 3D printed air filter and horns. I just finished installing the air filters. You can see both of them, even though we only went through one. I actually have two, but I've got both of those mounted on the car now. I think they look really good. They're sitting on top of the 3D printed horns that I did as well. Hopefully we'll have a track day later this month that I can do a little testing to see how well they hold up. The filament used, that Extrudr Pro, is supposed to be able to manage or handle up to 160 degrees Celsius. So hopefully it'll be able to do it. I'm going to do a video of the track day, and I'll provide commentary on it.